Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Business Builders Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Stannis. Creating a podcast for your business is an amazing way to communicate the personality of your brand and build trust with your potential customers. It gives you the ability to convey passion and excitement, as well as your knowledge and expertise to your audience. But most importantly, it can be a powerful way to build your brand and connect with new customers. In today's episode, we'll talk about the rise of podcasting as a marketing tool and how it can help take your business to the next level. But first, let's meet today's guest, Chris Hine from Southwest Florida Podcasts and the host of the Southwest Florida Business Podcast. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. Super excited. So just to let everyone know, Southwest Florida Podcasts is all about helping local businesses get their message to the world through professional podcasts, interviews, social media guidance. Did I miss anything there, Chris?
Nope, that's it.
Awesome. And I do want to give a plug. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your Southwest Florida Podcast is going to launch its first episode on March 24th.
Yep, that's correct.
Awesome. So if you're listening to this, it'll probably already have launched. So definitely go check it out. But let's kind of just, jump right in. So Chris, how did you get started into podcasting?
I guess going way back is probably 2013. I heard Joe Rogan talking on the Opie and Anthony show when I was doing an internship in New York City. And I was like, wow, what is podcasting? What is this thing? So I checked that out. And it was kind of the first time I ever listened to people talking super freely about whatever they wanted, whatever was on their mind. And I really got to see somebody who I, respected and everything, who is a lot further along in the journey of life than I am, kind of figuring it out, talking to people, talking honestly with people, which you really don't hear
in this day and age, right?
Oh, yeah. And it's becoming more commonplace, which is nice. But so that was really the intro to it. So I've been listening to that for a long time. Found Tim Ferriss, and then I found some other comedy podcasts like Tom Segura and his wife Christina Pazitsky, and now it's Tim Dillon. So all these things. So that's what got me aware of what podcasts were. And then the way that I started doing podcasting as a profession was by learning music production. And then somebody asked me, "Hey, do you think you could produce a podcast?" And I said,
"Sure,
I think so."
Yeah.
And that's that's my journey to start.
So what gave you the motivation to take that leap of faith to open up your own studio?
Just that I was looking for a change. I was looking to actually make money with music production, but the only problem with that is when you're really bad at music production, there's probably not a lot of people that want to pay you top dollar for low quality stuff.
Fair enough.
So, and having been in different businesses for a while and doing sales, I was at Flight Docs before doing sales, and I had started up a customer success team. I had done all these things, gone to trade shows. I've been around businesses for a long time, and so I kind of understand what people are looking for. And when a business approached me and asked me to do this, I was like, okay, let's see what we can do. Because there's real money that can be made if you're working with businesses. And I think that I can bring my experiences, or I thought I could bring my experiences from actually being in a business to apply it and not just be, hey, I'm some guy with some equipment that can record this and have like a bad attitude and all that stuff. I can bring that professional sheen to it. So that was like the deciding factor.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people, they're like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast, and they just kind of jump in with their feet first, and they don't realize, like you said, all the things that kind of are involved with that process.
Yeah.
So, it's really cool to, be sitting down with you. And for those of you, obviously you can't see it, but the studio that we're in right now is amazing. I'll make sure we've got photos or videos to, promote along with this. So definitely go check that out.
Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
So let's kind of dive in. Why in this day and age should a small business start a podcast?
I guess it's really any business, but it comes down to what your goal is as a business, because you got to look at it a little bit differently than maybe you would look at other podcasts, right? Because most people listen to their favorite podcast, whatever it might be, to try to get oh, well, I can't do this because they're getting 100,000, they're getting 1 million downloads. Nobody wants to hear me talk about that. What would I even talk about? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And not to be blunt about it, but you're probably right, is that most people, if you're talking about something with business, you're not going to get 100,000 people to listen to it. Most people probably don't care, but you got to get away from the metric of downloads as your primary driver, right? So if you're a business, you got to look at what the opportunities are. So if you incorporate podcasts into your marketing efforts, your sales efforts, your recruiting efforts, you use it as a overall business communication tool, you really open up a lot of new doors that you otherwise probably wouldn't have been able to open. So that's kind of like the high level answer. We could dive into some of the specifics if you want, but
Yeah. What would you say was the one thing that you learned that you wish you knew 6 months ago when it comes to podcasting?
everything. Basically, what equipment to buy, how to use it, how to set all of this stuff up, what your audience would be looking for, who your audience even is, what you're trying to tell them, what value that you bring to them. Because when I started this, I mean, you said it before, I was one of those people that just jumped right in. I started my own podcast before this one that we're launching, and thanks for the plug.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was like, all right, well, what's your podcast about? I was like, I don't know. It's just me and my friend just talking about nonsense. Okay, why would we listen to it? I was like, I don't know. And I didn't have the answer to any of those questions. So that's why if you are a business, is figure out why you're doing it. Figure out you got to figure out the business case for it. So if I'm a business and I want it, like, what am I trying to do? Am I trying to get more sales? Am I trying to recruit more people? You got to start there. And I wish I knew what I was starting for. And that's why I'm doing this new podcast, because I can talk to business people. I can grow my business using this as a vehicle, great marketing tool. And then I can have my thing on the side where me and my friend literally talk about the dumbest stuff that's out there. And I don't have to worry about some like important business person that says like, well, I don't want to be associated with that. I can use this as a business vehicle this way.
Yeah. So I think to your point, it's really about looking at it from any other marketing aspect, right? Of like, what's its purpose? What's my goal? How am I going to get there? And I think more importantly as well is, and I think a lot of people miss out on this, is how can I measure it? You had touched on, hey, maybe your goal shouldn't be to get, 10,000 or 1 million views. If you can get 20 people to listen to it that are actually impacted by it, and out of those 20 people, one of them picks up the phone and says, hey, Chris, I'd really love to do this. It's worked, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's one great way of doing it, because most people work in industries that have some sort of niche to them, and there's some limit on the size of that industry. So if you're sharing this stuff on social media and people are hearing clips or snippets of it, somebody's going to see that. They'll want to be a part of it. They'll reach out to you and say, hey, that had a big impact. So you have that listener and that marketing kind of phase that's valuable. But actually where I see the most value with business podcasts are that if you have a podcast for your business, you literally have a platform that you can elevate your guests. I'm going to throw this example out. This is just a generic example, but let's say I am a company that makes drinks, right? Like I make beverages, I can them, I bottle them, whatever it might be. And I sell to a lot of people locally. And let's say it's like a niche type of drink, whatever. You can go talk to a bunch of people in that industry, get a following, and then let's say, hey, I want to talk to Publix so I can be able to sell to Publix. Let me invite the VP of distribution. Let me invite the VP of X from that company to come talk on here, because I have a platform. They don't know how many people listen to it, but I have 50, I have 100 people, 150 people, whatever it might be, that are listening to this, and you have a chance to come share your expertise with my audience. Great. Let's have a conversation, half hour, an hour, whatever it might be. And by having that conversation, what are the chances of them actually picking up the phone, when you call back? Pretty high, right? What's going to be the difference between that initial sales conversation on a podcast versus, hey, please take my call. I promise I have value. You're
Right.
able to deliver value to that guest. So the way that I see the most value with these podcasts are that you can make those connections with, other businesses and other decision makers in businesses. And if you get listeners, that's great too. But I think that's really where the value is in terms of making these. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would also say, and kind of rephrasing what you just said, you're able to build connections with other experts in the industry that you're in as well.
Yep.
And people see that, they listen to it, and then they start to associate you in that same level of expertise as, in this case, in the example that you used, the VP of production for Publix.
Sure.
Shout out to that guy, whoever that guy is.
No, dude, that's a great point, and you start to become a thought leader. I know it's a cheesy term, but you really do, and there are benefits. Like we were just talking about. You listen to the episode with Keith, and I mean Keith from My Shower Door. He's become like a master on social media,
Yep.
and I was talking to him about this. He said and this is not even podcast related, but by being out there and doing all that kind of stuff, the people know who he is. And at these trade shows, he went around and met with these giant companies to ensure that their company is going to be the one that gets the materials and stuff instead of other companies, because there's all these shortages going on, but they have a ton of customers to help. By having this presence, by having this platform that they can elevate other people, those businesses want to do business with him. So a podcast can serve exactly that same way if you use it in that same way.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there really is no, defying straight arrow answer, right? It's going to be different for every company. It's going to be different for every person. I think to your point, it's going to really determine on that person to figure out what they can use it for.
Yeah, for sure. And you got to, part of it is looking at the return on investment for it, right? And you got to make sure that it makes sense. So if you have if you have a high volume, low dollar amount and you want to start a podcast, I mean, go cheap with the equipment and kind of DIY or outsource it, with, relatively low cost until you get this as like a real funnel for your business. But if you have, because if you do it at volume, you're not investing a ton of money up front, and, it can actually be a real revenue generator. But if you're like a company and the sales that you make are $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 per sale, if you say to yourself, okay, it's going to cost me X amount per month, let's say it's anywhere from $1,000 to, I don't know, make it up 10,000, even just like a super high number, right? If I do a podcast, do I think I can get 1 or 2 more customers per month? Okay, if the answer is yes, does that cover the cost of what it costs to hire somebody to do this?
Yeah, investing back into the podcast.
Exactly, because the other alternative is do this stuff yourself, which businesses, it's like businesses say like all the time, oh, I want to do this. I can't wait to do this. We're going to do a podcast. It's going to be great. And then literally the next morning, a customer issue rises up. They got to deal with that, and there's no time. So finding that ROI, look at your sales, look at what each sale can do. By having a podcast, do you think that this will cover the costs, at least in the short term? Yes. Pursue it. No. Reevaluate, go cheaper, see what else you can do. But I wouldn't give up on it because the opportunities we're talking about are there regardless of your budget.
Yeah, and I think also one of the great things about whether it's starting your own podcast or working with someone else to produce a podcast is its marketability, right? So one of the things that I had touched on is podcast episodes have a really long shelf life. Mm-hmm. I had talked to someone before where, he was acquiring customers that were listening to podcast episodes that he had produced 3 to 4 years ago. His customers were approaching him and say, hey, I heard you on this episode about X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 whatever it was. And he's thinking to himself, he's like, man, I recorded that 3 years ago.
Yep.
And it's still given back to me. So I think a lot of people, when they put an episode out there, they think it's just kind of like, one and done and forget about it. But I think the great thing about podcasts, at least in my opinion, is the remarketability of them, is a lot higher than a lot of other mediums that you might be able to utilize.
So on that, right, when you're going out, and you've been doing this for a while, you said you've been doing this since 2018 with this podcast, but you had a moment where you just were putting it out there, and then you switched it to really, hey, let me promote this and let me do this. I mean, you said the listenership went up, but so what did you find when you started remarketing?
Yeah, so really with us, and by the way, this is great because usually people don't ask me the questions, and I love it. What we really found works for us is spend the same or almost the same amount of time as you put in either planning and researching and actually producing the episode,
sure,
as you do marketing it, right? So what I mean by that is if it's going to take you 30 minutes to an hour to do research, it's going to take you another 1 to 2 hours to actually record. It's going to take you another hour, depending on who you are, maybe 2 to 3 like me, if you can't ever figure it out, to how to actually, edit those episodes together and promote it. You should be spending, 4 to 5 hours of actually promoting the episode. So what I mean by that is sit down, mark out a strategy, say, okay, this week we're going to post it on this social media. We're going to post it on Facebook. Next week, this is going to be great for LinkedIn. The following week, we're going to send it out to our segmented email list, right? And so we really thought about, hey, who's the audience we want to hit? Mm-hmm. And then how can we, almost like a drip campaign, how can we implement it to that audience over a month period? Because, in this day and age, there's so much noise. You can't just send something out once and expect to get results.
Yeah.
So what we've really noticed that really worked for us was, okay, let's hit this percentage of the audience this week. 2 weeks later, we're going to hit this one. And we found after doing that, even only after like 2 or 3 times that we did it, we found our views and our engagement, and even people just contacting us to say, hey, like I've had other hosts for the episode come back to me and say like, hey, I've had my customers, I've had new clients reach out to me because they heard me on your podcast.
Yeah.
When can I record another podcast?
Nice.
Right. And so when you're someone who is doing something with someone else and they come back to you and say, hey, I want to do it again, like that's just an aha moment.
That's awesome.
So really for us, and I think a lot of people, they miss this step when they talk about a podcast and they talk about, hey, I'm going to do a podcast. They kind of skip over it. It's the last thing they think of because, it's after production, right? Mm-hmm. It's after they've already done it. And for us, it's almost become the most important step.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to sound like I'm saying two contradicting things where the listenership doesn't matter, but yeah, the social media aspect is critical with some of this stuff because it's that tail end effect. It's like that wide net that comes after like the initial episode, and you do catch a lot of people just like that where now it's extending out. You give it to the guest. They say, okay, awesome. And if you are a host, one thing that I've started doing that I'm noticing is helpful, you take the clips out, you send to the guest, hey, we're putting this out. If you can, 2 days before, day of, and then a week later, if you can share, that this is going out. And also if you can go get 2-3 people that are in your professional network to also share this. And if you can, even more pro tip is give them the actual direct files of whatever it is, the audiogram, the video clip, whatever that might be, because that helps, because these networks I'm noticing, especially LinkedIn, are like, if you swarm it with people engaging and more people are attached to it, that seems to help.
Yeah, the system looks at it and says, okay, well, a lot of people are talking about this. It must be important.
Yeah.
Right. And to your point of getting, the other people to share it as well, that is tremendous when it comes to, reaching an audience that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. Mm-hmm. Right. So what we started doing as well is when we're about to officially launch the episode, we'll obviously reached out to, the guest host that we worked with and said, hey, listen, we're going to promote it on this time, this date. It's going out here. Here's the audio file. Here's the thumbnail image. Here's what you need. Can you please promote this on your channel? And obviously the ones that are able to do that, or the ones that are smart enough to do that, right? I should say that, are the ones where, who would have thought we get a lot more traction when we first announce it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious because you've got this thing going for 4 years. when you put these things out and you go back and you do this remarketing of the episodes, do you have a strategy behind it, or more so, what things are you seeing be the most effective when you launch it, that gets the most involvement, that seems to drive up the most listeners or make the most connections?
Yeah, with us, and we've just started doing this, I would say, like, over the last couple of months, and we've really noticed the difference is with our social media platforms. So obviously we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've got LinkedIn. We just started a TikTok. That's exciting, by the way. Yeah, we're hip, right? We're trying to reach that. But again, each of these platforms, we have a different goal and we have a different audience on each of these platforms.
Okay.
So what I mean
How
by
so?
that is, like, our messaging and our tactics that we utilize on Facebook are different from what we utilize our Instagram audience for, and it's different from what we utilize our LinkedIn audience for.
Sure.
So really for us is figuring out a different message for each time you promote it and a different way to promote it, right? So obviously on Instagram's all about video.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with TikTok, all about video. So when we promote the episode, we better have a video clip, 3 to 5 seconds, that we can, engage the audience on to get them to actually go listen to it, especially since our podcasts right now are just all audio file. I'll create its own video clip. Maybe it's just like, it's not the actual recording, but it's kind of like a mock of, like, here's what it would look like, something like that. So what I mean by that is, like, we're going to do something completely different on this platform.
Sure.
And we're going to post it at a different time and a different date than we would otherwise on, let's say, Facebook or LinkedIn.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So you actually stagger out even the message to different times.
Yes, because
cool.
with us too, and this isn't just for promoting a podcast episode. This is kind of any message we want to send out in general. Is we know that there's a better time, whether it's AM or PM, whether it's date, also messaging. Right, there's going to be a different message for each one as well. But we know, like, hey, okay, Tuesday AM, we're going to get a lot more engagement on Facebook than, and I don't know if this is true or not. So
yeah, sure. Just making it
right.
I get the concept.
Tuesday AM, I know I'm going to get a lot more engagement on Facebook than, let's say, Tuesday AM on LinkedIn.
Sure.
So I know I'm going to post it this week on Facebook, and I'm also going to stagger it because there might be some crossover in terms of who's following us on both platforms. So we don't want to also, spam them on every single platform.
Sure.
So this week's Facebook. The next week we're going to promote it on LinkedIn. The week after that, let's promote it on Instagram.
Got it.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense, because if you have that overlap, then you're not spamming them, and then it's that tail end effect. Oh, that's cool. All right.
Yeah.
And so just curious, what system do you use do you use a system that kind of tells you what is making things more effective, or?
Like a Hootsuite or something like that? Is
Yeah.
that right now? No.
Okay.
We've thought about it. Right now we're just kind of keeping really good eyes on it.
Yeah.
And just kind of managing, Facebook's got their own business manager, which is also tied into, Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn's got their own analytics. Right now it's not too much for us to manage. But I will say, if it keeps going the way it's going and how we want to grow it, there definitely might be an opportunity there to, like, jump on a platform like Hootsuite to kind of manage all of those.
Sure. Just tie it all
analytics
in
at
one.
once. And I mean, it's not just for podcasting in general. That's any marketing thing that you do, right?
Sure.
If you're trying to, get analytics and insight on 12, or in our case, it would be 6, because now we've got YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Right. So if you're trying to manage all those and trying to manage analytics and you're trying to see, like, what's working, it might make sense to jump on another platform. I will say, and this kind of ties to one of the questions I wanted to get to.
Sure.
The actual platform that we use to upload and, send out to all the other podcasting channels is Anchor. I don't know if you've ever heard of Anchor.
Yeah, I use it for one podcast that I have, the other one where I talk nonsense with my friend.
Yeah.
And then another one that I produce actually uses it, because
Okay.
they actually allow you to upload video and play video right in the Spotify app.
Yeah. So I was actually on Anchor before it was cool.
Okay.
Before it got bought out by Spotify, I started on Anchor because I was just on Google and I was like, hey, free podcasting tools. It was like the second one that came up. I looked into it. I signed up. I'm like, man, it does all this for free? Like, and it's still free to this day.
Yeah.
And it gets it on iTunes, which I'll kind of break this down too from the research that I found, there are other podcasting platforms you want to try to be on, but there's really only two that you 100% need to be on, and that's iTunes and Spotify.
Yep.
iTunes makes up, and I'm just going to throw this number out there. I don't know how outdated it is, but at the time it was like 80 to 85% of the podcasting market.
I think it's anyway. It fluctuates from like basically 50 to 65% now.
Okay.
And then Spotify is actually they're picking up steam with some of the younger
That's
audience.
the next big one.
Yep.
So with Anchor, it sends it out to like 10 or 12 different, I'll call them platforms, right? So iTunes, Spotify,
Pocket Cast, Stitcher, all these
iHeartRadio, something like that, right? Google Podcasts, all those, and it pushes them out. So as soon as I upload the episode, I can put in the title, the description, all this stuff. They have a new feature now too, where you can add like questions and polls.
Yep.
So I'm actually, I haven't tried it out yet, but I'm actually interested to see, get the feedback on that. But you do all this stuff, you upload all of it, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. So that's been a great help because, you sign up for free, it does all the work, it pushes it out to all the platforms. And then all I have to do is say, okay, I can look at the insights on Anchor too, and it'll tell me like how many people are viewing your episode on iTunes versus Spotify.
Yep.
And if I see, okay, 80% of my audience is iTunes, when I promote it, I'm going to make sure to include the iTunes link because that's where people are listening from.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's just kind of realizing like, hey, where are my listeners coming from? And let me make sure that I'm targeting them.
Yeah. It's just paying attention to that stuff. And when you go to promote it, make it as easy as possible for people to find these things and link to it. And I mean, I have the same thing. It's a little bit of a conundrum, especially because this thing hasn't launched yet. So figuring out, okay, well, I'm about to tell people like, hey, go listen and go subscribe. Should I give people the Apple link or the Spotify link?
Yep.
And it really comes down to figure out those numbers. I can't tell yet because my podcast launches in 2 days. And this particular one, in about 2 to 3 weeks, I'll have a much better idea of which one I'm running with.
Yeah, and I would also say if you're not sure, do both. Do all. If there's 3 or 4, use all 4. Like with us. Technically, I've got an iTunes link to promote, a Spotify, Google Podcasts. I've got our website link that I can send people. I've got the YouTube page I can send people. If you're not sure, just put them all in there, right? People will choose the one that they want to listen to. And then over time, like you said, you'll be able to see those trends. And then slowly but surely, you'll be able, that was a mouthful, you'll be able to look at those insights and see what people are actually listening to and then be able to market it from there.
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any other free resources, really inexpensive resources that you found that have been great when it comes to podcasting? Yeah,
a couple that I love, this doesn't even limit to podcasting, but for marketing is Canva. Canva is like, I don't know, $13 a month. Dude, I can't tell you how much stuff I make in Canva, how many times I've used that to import into the video editing software that I use to make titles and cool stuff. Canva is awesome. So definitely Canva.
Yeah, Canva's great.
Oh, yeah. And for hosting remote podcasts, I'd say I like Riverside a lot. They had a bunch of bugs, but I think they've fixed a decent amount of them. But basically what it does is it's like a Zoom or a Skype, except, sometimes you listen to a podcast recorded on Zoom and it's like sounds real kind of like telephony.
Yeah.
So what this does is the same thing, except it downloads the audio locally and then uploads it at the end. So it sounds like you have 2 locally recorded recordings, and then they actually have something nice where it kind of creates like a video clip of the thing. So if you just want to do it where you are recording 2 webcams, you can do that. I think they let you do an hour for free a month. And then I think it's pretty inexpensive after that if you just use it lightly. I mean, it might be like $10, $15 a month. What I will say is that if you're going to do stuff and you want to do it for free, you're probably going to have a really rough time. If you are willing to spend like $50 a month on a bunch of stuff, you're going to have a much smoother time. So especially if you're doing this for business, don't don't go total skimp on cost.
Yeah, and I think, that kind of plays to you get what you pay for, right?
Yeah, and
So there
people
are-
can make it work with the free stuff.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying is those people they might already know what they're doing, and if you don't know what you're doing, pay a little bit of money that for a service that takes away all of the stuff that you don't want to do and don't know how to do.
Yeah, and I think with us, excuse me, our first investment was on a microphone.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's a podcast, so you would think a microphone would play a very important role in that aspect, right?
Sure.
So with us, we found 2 brands that we really love. We've got Yeti, and we have what we talked about earlier as well, which is Rode.
Yep.
Now, it looks like, I'm trying to see the mics that we got here.
These are Shure SM7Bs.
Okay.
These are the Joe Rogan mics.
Okay, so these are the I'm assuming they're probably the top tier, if you will.
Yeah.
There you go. So I would say with us,
Hey, if I'm going to do a podcast
Hey.
studio, you gotta do it.
no, trust me. But I was going to say with us, we found, I would say microphone wise, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say like $150 to $200 is probably where you want to start, because
Yeah.
at least from what I've looked and I've talked to people, anything less than that, and again, you kind of skimp on the quality.
Yeah, and really, like, there's a couple out there. This is probably too in the weeds, but like, there's something called a dynamic mic and a condenser mic. If you have no sound treatment, you got nothing like that, get a dynamic mic that's a USB microphone. If you don't know anything about audio, get something that you can plug right into a computer. Save yourself the hassle, because then there's 2 that are out there. One is like $80, I think, from Audio Technica. That's a dynamic mic, USB, and what that does is it doesn't capture all of the sounds of the room. When you listen to something and you could tell, like, oh my God, are they in a cave or something? So this kind of mitigates that. And then there's a lighter version of this microphone by Shure, and that is the MV7. It's $250, but it sounds really pretty much just like this. I mean, I can't make this microphone sound better than that microphone. It's really close. So I would say, like, those are the ones that I'd recommend if you're going to get it. Yeti's great. There's another one from Rode that's great too. But yeah, don't break the bank and start getting super complex stuff. If you're not going to learn it and you don't want to learn it, don't do it, because you're gonna regret the money you spent, and you're gonna want to pull your hair out.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of questions I want to get to before we wrap up here.
Sure.
I've heard these from a couple people who are looking to start a podcast, and I wanted to get your input on this, because obviously it's different for every situation. But the first question is, how long should a podcast episode actually be?
Whatever you think delivers value to the people that you're trying to deliver value to. So if you think that this is going to be mostly people listening in their car on the way to work, probably keep it to half-hour max. If you need to convey really complex messages to an audience of people that are looking to learn about that complex message, make it an hour, make it 2, make it 3. The most successful podcast is Joe Rogan, and that's 3 hours long. So,
Yeah.
I mean, just don't feel like you need to fit a specific time slot because somebody said. Make it where I want my podcast to be filled with as much value, and if that happens to take 5 minutes, hell yeah. If that takes 3 hours, so be it. But make it where you're giving people value. I know it's a wishy-washy answer, but yeah, I hear a lot of people say, like, there's a magic formula, and there is a magic formula, but it's specific to you. So
Yeah.
there's not a universal one.
Awesome. No, great answer. So I'll tie that question also with a follow-up, same type of curveball answer.
Sure.
How often should you release an episode?
Again, that it doesn't fully matter, but I would say whatever is going to be consistent for you, and especially at the beginning. You don't have to release consistently each week, each 2 weeks, each month, because you have to. But you have to do whatever schedule is going to make you continue doing this, whatever you can handle. Because if you're going to go out and say, I'm going to record one every week and put out an episode every week, and you don't have the capacity, you don't have the material, you don't have the desire to even do that, well, it's going to fail. You're going to give up, and you'll put out 3 episodes and then you'll give it up. If all you can do is one a month, do one a month, because that is what works. But I would say consistency on releasing episodes is not so critical for the audience. Some people say it is. Who knows? Maybe they're right. I have no idea. Like everybody will tell you they know exactly what the thing is, but it changes all the time.
Yeah.
But the thing I would say is do whatever is going to make you consistently show up. That's the primary thing, because if your audience is expecting something and you don't want to do it, well, then you're not going to do it, and they're not going to have anything either way. So
yeah.
No,
definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris. If our viewers have any questions on any of the stuff that we talked about today, whether it's starting a podcast, equipment on podcasting, how, what's the next step for podcasting, how can they, best get in touch with you?
Sure. I would say visit www.swflpodcasts.com. So southwestfloridapodcast.com. I'm Chris Hine on LinkedIn. That's Heine. You might say Chris Heine. That helps people. But yeah, reach me there or on Instagram, SWFL Podcasts. Yeah, and then just reach out. If you have questions, shoot me a message on LinkedIn, call me, whatever. I'll help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man.
If you enjoyed listening to this episode, make sure to click that subscribe button so you never miss another show. Join other professionals looking to grow their business with Southwest Florida Inc. at swflinc.com and sign up for a free membership today. Thanks so much for listening to Business Builders. We'll see you next time.